today we're going to talk about an important factor that is within our being, and that word is conscience. Conscious. Okay. A little about conscience to begin today. A mother was helping her son with his spelling assignment and came to the words conscious and conscience. When she asked him if he knew the difference between the two, he responded, "Sure, mom. Conscious is when you are aware of something, and conscience is when you wish you weren't." That's funny to me. "Sure, mom. Conscious is when you are aware of something, and conscience is when you wish you weren't aware." And I laugh at that because when I was a child, I found out really quick what was those two words for me. I remember when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and I was walking in this colorful open market in the coast of Guatemala. And for a kid, that's really exciting because there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of things to see. And I remember that I came by a whistle, those regular whistle, but it was made in the form of adobe by clay, right? It was clay made. And so I wanted it so bad. It caught my attention. I blew it, and I didn't see nobody that was around there. And so I begged my mom to purchase me this item, this whistle, but I did not get a positive response for her. So I did what I thought it was best at that time. And I always been skinny and I always run. So I came back. I took that whistle and I took off. I didn't know that the owner was like taking a siesta underneath the table, and he started chasing me. And as he started chasing me, he was not gonna cut up with me in the middle of the crowd, but something told me you better stop. So I stopped and gave it to him, and he was so mad to say the least. And he says, "Go put it back," and he called me a very nasty name. So I apologized. I gave it to him, and he's like, "You're lucky. I didn't call the police." So, but that was not the experience I was looking for, right? And the feeling. So the important thing out of that very bad situation for me was that as I walked away, I felt, listen to me, I felt my heart pounding. Okay. Inside, I felt my heart pounding. I knew I did something wrong, right? So my conscience and my conscience, they both came together, and I did not feel the greatest. Why are we talking about this is very important because it has to deal with our being in terms of being receptive, not only to be aware of others, but more importantly, to be aware of God. When you are aware of God, there is something wonderful that happens. And so many times, and we will talk about more of this in the near future, specifically what I would in my book, Apocalyptic Anointing. I talk about dreams and visions and all that. And I want to talk to you about this, define what conscience is. In my book, I going to read something from my book on page 42, where it talks about that the three main organs of the spirit, hear me out, that we need to cultivate in order, listen very careful, in order for the believer to see into the spiritual realm is these three things that are being mentioned. Ready? The first one is conscious, the second one is intuition, and the third is communion. But what is conscious? Conscience is the discerning organ which distinguish right or wrong. Not, however, pay attention to this, not, however, through the influence of knowledge stored in the mind, but rather by a spontaneous direct judgment. You hear me? You hear me what I'm saying? Is an spontaneous direct judgment that immediately in that situation. So to me, I did something wrong. Then I pause and I stop and say, oh, this is not right. I gotta do something about it. And so I return the item. And so we're going to look um, very specific scriptures that I put at the beginning of this introduction. So the first one that we're going to read is found in the book of Acts, chapter 17, verses 16. While Paul in Athens was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jewish and the God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. That was his audience, right? But what draws attention to this particular verse of the Bible is that he said he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. There was something in the conscience of Paul that troubled him and said, there is something wrong in this picture. These people are living without a relationship with God, and they are in the wrong relationship with these idols. So I was meditating, contemplating in this verse. Hear me out. Conscience will make you aware of our idolatry, of our false perception, perhaps our false beliefs. And if we cannot deliver ourselves from those false perception, false narratives and stories that we have created in our minds, and perhaps the enemy has planted in our minds as a seed. Listen, we cannot be aware of the presence of the way in which God speaks to us. Are you listening to me? So it's very important to understand that when our conscience is activated and it's active, typically not because we are so knowledgeable, because remember the definition that we read is not by some kind of knowledge that's stored in our brain, but there is a divine, there is an immediate impulse that tells you, oh, there is something fishy around here. Okay? Which this will combine with your intuition. Later on, we'll talk about intuition. But for right now, your conscience will give you, let me put it this way, perhaps a reality check, maybe? Of what's going on in you. So, Paul here, he was going about his business, and all of a sudden he says, there's something wrong with this picture. And because he's conscious and became aware of the idolatry, which is conscious, he said, I better talk to them about this situation. Let me see what I can do. If I can persuade them to believe in God, believe and to have a relationship with the Creator. So it's very important that we understand conscience as a way, a means of being the detector, being the stopper, if you want to articulate it that way, of things that are not going to be of any interest or good interest for us, let alone give us the window through and the openness to sense God, to perceive God's voice, to perceive what God is doing in our lives. Sometimes we lose, okay? Sometimes we lose the sensitivity of our conscience because we don't listen to it, we don't pay attention to it, and as a result of that, we end up sort of killing it or not being aware of it. And so when that happens, God also cannot come into the picture in our beings. He can't. He cannot. Why? Because we are so completely, maybe that's where the Bible calls it, our hearts get hard, like a rock, like a stone. And so I just want you to reflect today about conscience. And many times, if we don't pay attention to it, like I said, we kill it, we numb it. And as a result of that, we cannot hear good word. We cannot hear direction. We cannot hear, we become stubborn. And our conscience is ultimately the one to thank for or blame. And so that already is taking about 12 minutes just talking about conscience. And I want to keep it short. There are other scriptures, 1 Corinthians 5:3, 2 Corinthians 2, 3, and 4. It makes those distinctions too, and how important conscience is to our spirit, how conscience is important to our soul. But today, I want you to reflect. Where is your conscience today? What is conscience? And you can find those definitions in different sources. But today, as I read one of the sources, it says it is an immediate judgment. I also gonna put it in words in front of us. The Latin for it is conscientia mille testes. Conscientia, later conscience, originally referred to sheer awareness or sheer knowledge, scientia, where we get the word science, or in Spanish, ciencia. So that is a connection with experience. Experiencia is a close one. So in the Christian history, there are these definitions, and I'll put it in front of you. So it is knowledge, right? Knowledge of God being around you, knowledge about people being around you. It is the good knowledge, it's the bad knowledge. It is the sensing organ, and Watchman calls it organ, right? It is there is something, the function, there is something concrete inside of us that's called conscience, and that conscience can be receptive to God, can be receptive to evil, can be receptive to manipulation, can be receptive to many things that perhaps we're not aware, but in the moment you're able to distinguish and to discern. My question to you today is, how is your conscience? Is it in a good place? Is it being receptive to the good, to the word of God? Is it receptive to good guidance, good counsel? Or you haven't been even able to be open to good instructions? And let me tell you, when our conscience is not operating the way it should be operated, we make very bad decisions in every possible way that we can think or imagine. So what you need to do is say, God, perhaps my heart is hardened, perhaps my conscience is null, frozen, non-sensitive, and I want you to begin to heal me, to restore that conscience in me, so I can receive your word, so I can receive a revelation, a dream, a vision, so I can hear you, because it's been a long time since I have been able to sense your presence. So today I will pray that you would continue to cultivate your conscience. Okay, it's very important in order for us to grow in our relationship with God, and specifically, more importantly, our relationship with others. So God bless you.